Welcome to Purposely Peaceful. I'm your host, Jessica Rivera, a licensed marriage and family therapist and a quantum hypnosis practitioner. This podcast is where real life meets inner peace. You'll get honest conversations, practical tools, and soulful guidance to help you live with more clarity, calm, and purpose. Welcome back, friends. Today, I want to talk about fear. More specifically, I want to talk about doing things before you feel ready. Because if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you might assume I'm comfortable speaking. You might assume I've always been confident, that I've always enjoyed putting myself out there. And the truth is, I've been incredibly shy for most of my life, like painfully shy. So shy that I worried about what everyone would think. I would be so uncomfortable to get any attention, and it felt really vulnerable to be seen, to be myself. And I know some people hear that and they don't believe me. The other day I was talking to one of my daughters and I was telling her, I'm really shy and I do this anyway. And I look up and both my husband and one of my daughters slowly look up at me and they're shaking their head no. My daughter's like, "You're not shy." And I'm like, "Oh, yes, I am. You just don't see that side of me because, first of all, I'm mom, but also because I've done a really good job at pretending to not be shy. But I can be a little awkward. Just ask people that just met me. You could tell sometimes I don't know what to say, but I own that and I can laugh about it. I'm okay with being embarrassed. But anyway, I've been a therapist for a long time. I have a podcast and now I'm posting on social media. But trust me when I tell you that younger Jessica would be so horrified by all of the things that I'm doing right now. She'd be like, "We're doing what now? Now we're voluntarily letting strangers listen to our thoughts and we're putting videos on the internet? Oh, heck no." I think that part of me kind of still exists somewhere inside of me. That's my ego. And that part of me isn't very loud anymore. So I'm still able to do it because I've learned how to manage that part of myself. But honestly, I would have preferred to quietly sit in the corner, avoid eye contact with everybody, and just kind of pretend I don't exist. It's interesting to me that some part of me still craves that, which is funny because life kept putting me in situations where that wasn't really an option. I don't get to go hide. And I've been fearful my whole life, but I'll focus in on when I was in college. And I didn't know this before I signed up for my undergrad program, but they do a lot of group work and there's a lot of individual and group presentations. So all of a sudden I had presentations, lots of them, not once, not twice, week after week after week for years. And at first I hated it. I was nervous. I was super in my head. I was really uncomfortable. I remember every single time that I would think about it, my stomach would drop. And it would happen every single time it crossed my mind for the 6 weeks up until I had the first one. Looking back, college was probably my first real lesson in exposure therapy. Every week there was another presentation, whether I liked it or not. And every week I thought, maybe they won't ask for one this week. No, they never forgot. And every week I survived. And eventually I stopped feeling like I was going to die every single time I stood in front of a room. The more that I did it, the less scary it became. Not because I became fearless, because I became familiar. It was a process. And that's an important distinction because my confidence didn't come first. The repetition came first. And it was kind of like sink or swim, and I wanted to pass the class, so I needed to swim. That's the funny thing about fear, is that it wants us to believe that discomfort is dangerous, like it's a bad thing. Most of the time, discomfort is just uncomfortable. It feels really uneasy. And there is a difference, and you want to be able to separate that it's not dangerous. It really is funny to me that I have a podcast. I'm putting my face out there. Some part of me does not want to do that. Years later, I was facing a similar challenge yet again, starting this podcast. And honestly, recording the podcast took a lot out of me in the sense that there were pieces of me that felt safer staying hidden. Pieces of me that I didn't want strangers listening to. didn't want attention, didn't want visibility. It felt really vulnerable because I'm usually the listener, not the talker. And even though I do talk a lot in session and I am interactive with my clients in that way, everything that I say, it's for them. There is some benefit in whatever it is that I'm saying that is for them. And it felt safe because it's one-to-one in an office and it's entirely another animal to put your thoughts out into the world. There has been many, many moments where I have questioned myself. Does anybody care? Is this even going to help anybody? What if nobody listens? What if someone else is saying it better than me? And honestly, what if people do listen? That felt scarier because then people know you're out there. They know what you think. They know what matters to you. It's not a secret anymore. There is something incredibly vulnerable about being seen, especially as an introverted, shy person. There's been certain things in my life that have shaped me to be very shy, to want to be invisible. And it's been quite a journey, especially when you've spent a lifetime feeling safer blending into the background. And the beauty of it all is that I did it anyway. And after enough episodes, something happened. What once felt terrifying started feeling normal. Not easy, just normal. That's how growth works. We think one day we're magically going to feel ready, but usually readiness comes after we start. How does someone become an expert? Because they had a lot of time in the practice, learning, mastering part of whatever it is that they're doing, and then they became an expert. Right? So there's no such thing as going in knowing everything and being super duper prepared. When I did release the podcast and I got used to it, I felt like I just unlocked a new level of confidence within myself that I didn't even know that I had. And recently, I found myself facing that same lesson again with social media. If you've been following along, I haven't been posting for long. And it's been probably about 10 days by the time this episode is released. And in actuality, this is day 4. And I'm still uncomfortable. I'm still in the awkward phase. I'm still figuring it out. And I'm having moments like, what am I doing? I think last night I kept telling my husband, like, I don't want to do this. It's really uncomfortable. I thought I was going to record these videos and I was just going to push them out. I don't want anyone that I know to see them. Well, funny story, and I love my family for this, and it's not that I wanted to hide it from them, but it's just, I don't know. I think I'm still trying to protect myself, but when I saw my family liking or following, I was like, oh no, I've been found. I just didn't want to annoy people, which is kind of funny. It's a different way of not wanting to take up space. Like, oh, I don't want to bother people. Only strangers if they want to be bothered. But I have to look at the facts that I've already recorded over a year of podcast episodes, almost weekly, but not quite, kind of slow down toward the end. I've sat behind a microphone talking about deeply personal things, about how I am, how I operate in the world. And yet somehow posting a little video felt so much scarier. It's not very rational sometimes. It's not a big deal, but the brain makes it feel like it is. It doesn't care that you've conquered one mountain. It's just going to find another one. That's the beauty of exposure therapy. You just keep doing it over and over and over and over. I know where the core wound is. I know why I feel what I feel. And I'm going to do it anyway. Because I know that if I do this enough, I get used to it. And I can focus on the message of making a positive impact in the world. And that was my realization. Because I talk a lot about creating that positive ripple effect. I talk a lot about making maximum impact. I talk a lot about helping people find more peace. And eventually I had to ask myself that difficult question. If I truly want to help people, how are they supposed to find me if I never put myself out there? How are they supposed to hear the message if I keep it hidden? How are they supposed to benefit from something that stays locked away because I'm uncomfortable? And that hit me pretty hard enough to force me to do something that felt really scary. Because I realized my desire to stay comfortable was competing with my desire to make an impact. And eventually I had to choose. So what I do? I bought a course, I picked a date, and I decided I was going to do it whether I felt ready or not. Not because I suddenly became fearless. I'm not fearless. Sometimes maybe, but I'm not. Because I finally understood something. That fear isn't always a warning sign. Sometimes fear is simply the cost of growth and being uncomfortable and doing something new. It shows up because you're stretching beyond what feels familiar, what feels predictable. It shows up because you're becoming someone you've never been before. Yeah, that's really scary. And if we're not careful, and this happens a lot to a lot of people, and myself included, we'll spend years waiting for fear to leave before we act. When in reality, action is often what teaches fear to leave because I'm going to do something about it. We think successful people felt ready. No, they're not always ready. They're willing to take a risk. We think confident people felt confident first. No, they built that. We think courageous people weren't scared, but they learned to do it with fear. That's how they got through it. That's how you become courageous. But I don't think that's always true. I think most people are scared. I think the difference is that some people decide that fear doesn't get the final vote. They bring the fear with them. They get in the car together. The fear is sitting in the passenger seat, freaking out, throwing a fit, but hey, we're still driving. And that's courage, to do it anyway. The biggest lesson that I have had and that I've seen in others as they go through their journeys is that the fastest growth in life has always come from the things that most of us didn't feel ready for, like leaving unhealthy relationships, going back to school, starting a podcast, posting on social media. None of it felt comfortable and none of it was easy, but every single one of those experiences has expanded my life. I've seen it expand other people's lives. And just so we're clear, I'm not standing here on the other side of this telling you I've conquered it. It's only been a handful of days. That's it. I'm uncomfortable telling you that I'm uncomfortable. I still cringe sometimes. I still overthink things. I still wonder if I'm doing it right. But I also know something now that I didn't know years ago. The uncomfortable phase is where the growth happens. And guess what? Once you have the growth, no one can take it away from you. So if we leave every time it gets uncomfortable, then we leave before the transformation. And if you're listening to this, I know you don't want that anymore. And I don't either. So if there's anything that you've been wanting to do, something you've been putting off because you're waiting to feel ready, consider this your friendly reminder that you may never feel ready, you may never feel confident, but confidence isn't usually what comes before action. Confidence is what happens after you've put in some effort, created some action, and moved the needle. Maybe the next step is just doing it anyway. Thank you so much for being here. I'll catch you on the next one.